You ever wake up thinking the world just decided to prank you? Like maybe you stepped into an alternate dimension where logic doesn't apply? That was me, bleary-eyed, coffee in hand, staring down at a front yard that looked like it had hosted monsoon, despite there being no rain in the forecast for weeks. And that was only the beginning. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of day where the sun rises lazily, the birds chirp politely, and your coffee tastes exactly how your mood feels, burnt and confused. I stepped outside to breathe in the quiet suburban air, my ceramic "don't talk to me before coffee" mug still steaming. But the moment I stepped off my porch and felt the squelch beneath my slipper, the mood shifted. My lawn was soaked, not just a little dewy. I mean puddles. Water glistened in the morning light like a flood had rolled through and spared just my property. I stared, blinking, wondering if I was still dreaming. The weird part? The hose, my only source of water outside, was warm, used, and I hadn't touched it in days. I squinted at the spigot, then back at the garden hose coiled neatly, almost too neatly, by the tap. It was always a mess when I left it. I chalked it up to faulty memory, shook my head, and went back inside, but the unease stuck with me like a pebble in a shoe. That night, I pulled up my utilities dashboard, casually checking my water usage. What I saw made me do a double take. A spike, not a gentle uptick. A vertical line. I lived alone. No kids. No roommates. No plants needing constant care, except for a dying tomato plant I've been ignoring since July. I barely use water, except to shower, clean dishes, and rehydrate myself after eating too much sodium. So how the hell had I used the equivalent of a small pond over the past few days? I stared at the numbers. They didn't lie. Gallons, hundreds, used over the course of a few mornings. Someone was using my water. But who? And how? At first, the idea of a leak crossed my mind. Maybe a busted pipe underground? But the grass wasn't just soaked in one area. It was evenly damp, consistently, like it had been professionally watered. Except I didn't own a sprinkler system. The next morning, I did a full sweep of the property, pretending to be a lawn inspector, while wearing mismatched socks and bedhead that could scare off raccoons. No broken pipes. No leaky spigots. Nothing out of place except for that same warm hose and soggy lawn. I even checked the back. Maybe some kids had found a way in to use it, but the gates were closed, locked. No footprints. No muddy trails. It was like water just magically disappeared from my line each morning. I installed a temporary water meter on the hose tap, a cheap little device that would at least tell me when water was flowing. I didn't know what I was looking for yet, but I felt like I was catching the scent of something off. And I was right. The street I live on is quiet. Suburbia in its most cliché form. Sidewalks lined with trimmed hedges, identical mailboxes, and morning joggers who wave but never make eye contact. But even in our vanilla paradise, we had her, Karen. And yes, her real name was Karen. She had moved in 2 months earlier and was instantly known. She walked the neighborhood with a clipboard like it was a crown, writing down violations in the way a medieval tax collector tallied sins. Her reign began with a note taped to someone's door about excessively whimsical wind chimes. Then she filed a complaint about another neighbor's shutters being too turquoise. And I'll never forget her yelling at the mailman because he parked too aggressively in front of her mailbox. The HOA hadn't appointed her. She just appointed herself. I didn't suspect her right away. Her tyranny was visual, not covert. She liked being seen. But something about her constant presence on the street, the way she peered into yards and frowned at garden gnomes, started itching at my suspicions. Especially when I noticed she always wore gloves, like she was handling evidence, or hiding something. Karen wasn't just a neighbor. She was a force. She walked like she owned the pavement. Her clipboard clutched tightly like a sheriff's badge. Her sun hat was absurdly wide, casting a shadow big enough to block truth itself. Every interaction with her felt like a job interview you hadn't prepared for. One afternoon, I saw her outside yelling at Glenn, a retired schoolteacher who lived 3 doors down because his hammock was too relaxed for community standards. He just blinked and closed his door mid-sentence. I watched in stunned silence from behind my blinds. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just nosy. She was the kind of person who believed rules didn't apply to her, just to others. Suddenly, the unexplained water made a lot more sense. I began mentally rewinding everything. The hose, the lawn, the water bill. And then I remembered something chilling. That one time, early last week, I passed by her house and saw her porch, immaculate, dripping wet. A portable pressure washer sat nearby. I didn't own one, but I knew exactly where she got the water. There's a special kind of rage that comes from watching someone violate your space, smile about it, and then act like you're the problem for noticing. That rage? It has a name. It's called Karen. And this time I caught her. It happened on a Saturday. I'd just come back from the grocery store, eggs, coffee, and a stubborn determination to figure out what was happening to my water bill. I pulled into my driveway, slowly, careful not to spill the overfilled bag of oranges in my passenger seat. And that's when I saw her, Karen, in all her glory. Enormous sun hat, floral blouse, crisp white pants, dragging my hose across my yard like it belonged to her birthright. There was no hesitation, no subtlety. She had it hooked up to a small electric pressure washer and was spraying her front steps, my water shooting in a tight, bright stream over her concrete. I didn't move, just sat there in the car, engine running, jaw somewhere near the floor mat. She looked up, gave me the kind of wave you'd give your favorite barista, and shouted, "Hope you don't mind. Just a quick rinse." Did I mind? Before I could respond, she turned her back and resumed scrubbing like nothing had happened, like I was the guest in this equation. I gripped the steering wheel like it owed me answers. Later that day, after running a mental obstacle course of confrontation strategies, some involving law school, others involving flamethrowers, I decided on a polite neighbor approach. I knocked on her door, hands in my pockets, rehearsed speech ready to go. When she opened, she had that smile again, tight, smug, like she already knew she was untouchable. "Hi, Karen." I began. "I think there might have been some confusion about the hose earlier. I noticed you were using it, and—" "Oh, I just like your hose better," she cut in laughing. "The water pressure's amazing. You're so lucky." I blinked. "Well, it's just that I figure it's all community property anyway, right?" She winked. "Actually, it's not. I pay for that water, so—" She tilted her head like I was a misbehaving child. "We're all neighbors. Sharing is caring." And then, with a grin so sharp it could slice bread, she shut the door in my face. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just closed the conversation like a book she had no intention of reading again. Still trying to stay civil, I emailed the HOA. I figured maybe, just maybe, there was a policy in place. Maybe they confirmed that no, water hoses aren't communal drinking fountains for porch tyrants. I sent a full report. Photos of the soaked lawn, the date-stamped video from my car dash cam, showing her dragging the hose, and a screenshot of my ballooning water bill. The response? "Thank you for your concern. At this time, we encourage all neighbors to resolve minor disputes amicably without HOA intervention. In other words, we're not dealing with your hose war. Figure it out." I sat at my desk rereading the email like I'd missed some hidden sarcasm. Was I being punked? Apparently, within this HOA, water theft wasn't serious. Just a minor dispute, like forgetting to bring deviled eggs to the block party. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was motivated. That night, I took action. I bought a heavy-duty hose lock, the kind used in construction yards, wrapped in steel and confidence. Installed it right before bed, double-checked the mechanism, and even ran a test to confirm it held. Karen might love pressure washers, but she wasn't getting past this one. At least, that's what I thought. The next morning, coffee in hand, I walked out to admire my new sense of control, and froze. The lock was gone. Not unlocked. Not damaged. Gone. The sliced metal ends of the hose told the story. Someone had used bolt cutters. Clean, sharp, intentional. I stared at it like it was a murder scene. There was even a footprint, a delicate, narrow print in the soil leading back across the street. Guess who was out front again, humming while scrubbing the wheels of her car with my hose. Karen, she didn't even look guilty. She just looked up mid-scrub and said, "Oh, that thing? It was a safety hazard. Someone could trip." Then she smiled, flipped her hair, and continued washing her tires with the nonchalance of a criminal who knew the system was on her side. After that, she got bolder. It wasn't just weekends anymore. It was every day, 10:30 sharp, like a religious ritual performed with complete impunity. Sometimes I'd peek through my blinds and catch her strolling across my lawn with a coffee in hand and a smug grin that made my teeth itch. She didn't even glance around anymore, just turned the spigot and walked off like she'd paid the bills herself. I tried confronting her once more mid-spray. She raised an eyebrow and said, "You should be grateful. I'm keeping your hose in shape. Most people would charge for a service like this." I said nothing. I couldn't. My tongue was too busy trying to not choke on my own disbelief. The HOA wouldn't act. The lock was useless. And Karen had graduated from entitled neighbor to full-blown backyard bandit. That night, I sat on the couch in complete silence, lights off, watching my security cam feed, like it was a live show. I realized something important, something sharp, final, and defining. I wasn't dealing with a misunderstanding. I was dealing with a villain, a suburban tyrant who had declared war on boundaries. And if the system wouldn't stop her, then I would. Some people steal quietly. Others leave no trace. But Karen? She stole water like she was filming a reality show called Lawns of Entitlement. And lucky for me, I had the cameras rolling. After the bolt cutter incident, I stopped trying to win politely. My neighbor Glenn, he of the colorful hammock fame, once told me, "The thing about Karen is she acts bold when she thinks no one's watching. You want her to stop? Show her she's being seen." So I did. I bought a tiny motion-activated security camera, the kind marketed as invisible, but sturdy enough to survive a hurricane. I tucked it under the gutter near the hose spigot, covered by the shadow of a fake birdhouse I hadn't dusted in months. The camera blended perfectly. Karen would never notice. Then I waited. I didn't even have to wait long. The next morning, at 10:31 a.m. like clockwork, the motion alert pinged my phone. I opened the feed and watched, mouthful of toast, as Karen strutted into my yard like she owned the deed, uncoiled the hose, and turned the water on with a flare you'd expect from someone performing a halftime. No hesitation. No glances. Just pure, unfiltered Karen energy. I had her. Finally. Caught in 4K. I let the camera roll for 2 more days. Not because I needed more evidence. Because I wanted to see how far she'd go. And wow, she delivered. Day 2. She filled a bright blue kiddie pool in her front yard. Her dog splashed in it while she sipped lemonade on a lounge chair, waving to passing joggers as my water poured down the sidewalk. Day 3. She watered her flowers with the same smug posture as a royal gardener, then used the remaining pressure to clean bird droppings off her mailbox. 3 full mornings of unfiltered footage. Crystal clear. Time-stamped. Unmistakable. And then came the final act, the one that made the decision for me. She smiled at the camera. She didn't know it was a camera, of course. She thought it was a decorative fixture. But she stared straight into the lens and said, "Best hose in the neighborhood." So generous of him. I laughed so hard, I choked on my cereal. I didn't go nuclear. Not yet. Just tactical. I posted a short, edited version of the footage to a local neighborhood Facebook group. One of those HOA-run message boards where people normally complain about trash cans left on the curb or dogs barking at 6 a.m. Caption: "Neighbor steals my water every morning." Here's the footage. Within 2 hours, it exploded. Reactions ranged from disbelief to rage to comedy gold. I knew it. She tried to take my recycling bin last month. Karen strikes again. "You're a legend. I'm buying popcorn. Attach this hose to a sewer tank and see what happens." One guy sent me a link to a motion-activated sprinkler designed to drench trespassers. Another offered legal advice. Said his cousin was an HOA lawyer. A woman messaged me offering her pressure washer in solidarity. But the best part? Karen saw it. I knew because the post got quiet for a few hours. Then boom, A new comment appeared from an account with a profile picture of a cat and a suspiciously familiar writing style. Filming people without their consent is illegal. You'll regret this. Oh, Karen. She didn't just stew in silence. The very next morning, Karen knocked on my door with the fury of a sitcom villain in season finale mode. No sun hat, no smile, no floral pattern, just rage, trembling hands, and a speech rehearsed in front of a mirror. "You're violating my privacy," she shouted, waving a printed screenshot of the video post. "This is harassment. You're ruining my reputation. People are laughing at me." I raised an eyebrow. "You stole my water." "That's irrelevant," she snapped. "You had no right to film me." I didn't argue. I didn't defend. I simply said, "You were on my property." She stared, searching for a comeback. Then, in true Karen fashion, she crossed her arms and hissed, "Do something about it. I dare you." And that was the spark. Up until that moment, I played the part of the reasonable neighbor. I asked nicely. I contacted the HOA. I installed a lock. I caught her on tape. But now, she had dared me. Not challenged me. Dared me. And there's something dangerous about daring a quiet man with access to sewage tanks and too much free time. It started that afternoon. I took a slow drive past a construction site 2 blocks over, where a city crew was digging up part of the road. They had all kinds of equipment, generators, pipes, and most importantly, a giant portable sewage tank. It was hideous, green, rusted, but very much active. I parked nearby and struck up a casual chat with one of the workers during his lunch break. Told him I was dealing with backyard drainage issues and wondered if they had a tank I could observe, just for an irrigation experiment. He laughed, shrugged, and said, "As long as you don't touch the pump, I don't care." Perfect. I slipped him a folded 20, thanked him, and left with mental blueprint already forming. Back at home, I pulled out my tools and started crafting the most poetic plumbing rig in suburban history. It involved a valve, a split hose system, and one very well-hidden underground line that snaked from my spigot to the sewer tank. The outward setup looked innocent. The hose sat neatly coiled. The spigot looked untouched. But turn that valve? Boom! Not water. Sewage. Raw, unfiltered, city-grade sludge. I tested it once. Just once. Filling a sealed bucket to confirm the pressure and, more importantly, the stench. I gagged. Twice. Then smiled. Because I knew exactly what was coming. And she'd never see it. Some people dream of justice. Others settle for silence. But when someone dares you to act, sometimes you give them exactly what they ask for in gallons of city-grade sewage. After Karen dared me to do something about it, I stopped playing chess. I started preparing for war. The construction site near the neighborhood had become my unlikely source of inspiration. What began as a casual drive-by had turned into a tactical gold mine when I discovered the massive green sewage tank they used to store waste from portable toilets on the job site. Industrial, active, untapped potential. I returned that afternoon. One of the workers, a stocky guy in his 40s who looked like he could bench press a traffic cone, was leaning on the tailgate of a truck, sipping a gas station soda. I struck up a friendly chat, said I was a homeowner experimenting with eco-drainage, and needed to simulate a water backup system for one evening. He raised an eyebrow, but I slid a crisp $40 his way, casually folded in half. "As long as you don't touch the pump, I don't care what you do," he said with a shrug. Boom. Access granted. I had everything I needed. And that night, the plan began. The setup had to be perfect. Clean on the surface, dirty underneath. I ran a new secondary hose line underground from my spigot, threading it behind a patch of thick bushes and under a wooden fence post. It led to a temporary coupling I built with a shut-off valve and a release switch. The valve was cleverly disguised beneath a fake irrigation box lid I'd ordered off Amazon months ago for a project I never finished. The spigot itself still had my normal garden hose coiled neatly like it always did. I even polished the brass handle and adjusted the coil for that inviting aesthetic. I wanted everything to look casual, like the hose was just asking to be stolen. The real trick? A split flow adapter hidden inside the box controlled where the water, or in this case not water, would come from. I could toggle between regular flow and sewage with a remote switch inside my garage. Simple, seamless, diabolical. I stood in the yard at midnight, staring at the trap like a mad scientist admiring his monster. It was ready. The next morning was cinematic. 10:27 a.m., I got the alert. 10:30, the motion sensor feed popped up. There she was, right on schedule. Karen strutted across my lawn like a peacock on parade. She wore oversized sunglasses, yoga pants, and a smugness that radiated to the pixels. She bent down, uncoiled the hose, and glanced once, just once, at the spigot. Then she dragged away like a prize she'd won. This time, she wasn't watering plants or scrubbing steps. No, this was grander. She hooked the hose up to a rotating sprinkler, one of those wide-arc sprayers that spin like helicopter blades, and proudly planted it dead center in her front yard. Then, the moment she turned the spigot, at first, just a gurgle. Then came the spray, a thick, chunky, brownish-black arc shot from the sprinkler, splattering the grass, the porch, and most gloriously, her pristine white wicker furniture. She froze. The sprinkler did not. It rotated once, spraying the flower beds, twice, blasting a decorative frog statue. And on the third pass, it got her, right in the legs. She screamed, a sound that could curdle milk. She lunged toward the spigot, slipped on her now swampy lawn, and landed flat on her but in a puddle of sewage water. Neighbors peeked out. A few stepped fully onto their porches. One guy pulled out his phone and started filming. God bless him. Karen fought the hose like it was a venomous snake, finally yanking it free, but not before another belch of waste sprayed her ankles. She was soaked, furious, famous, and I watched it all live from my phone like the Super Bowl. By noon, the neighborhood had erupted. Screenshots from the video were circulating faster than yard sale flyers. One neighbor, a teenager with too much time and a great sense of editing, had added slow-motion replays and synced the sprinkler to opera music. Karen had gone viral. Again, but this time with smell-o-vision. People started calling it the Sewage Showdown. Others dubbed her Queen of the Stink. One particularly clever guy dubbed the footage Karen versus the Hose Final Flush. But the real shift came not from the laughter. It came from the looks. Karen walked out to retrieve her ruined patio cushions and was met with silence. No more polite waves. No more fake smiles. Just the cold, quiet stares of neighbors who'd finally seen her without her crown. And I stood by my mailbox, sipping lemonade, watching her try to salvage her pride from beneath a stinking rug of karma. She couldn't. But of course, Karen wasn't done. She disappeared for the rest of the day. No knocking, no threats, just stillness, like a snake retreating into its den. The next morning, a plain white envelope appeared in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Inside, an official HOA letterhead and 3 typed pages of complaints. She had filed a formal claim. The charges? Intentional sabotage, biological assault, environmental hazard creation, personal endangerment, and my personal favorite, weaponization of household utilities. According to her, the incident caused emotional trauma, structural damage, and even made her dog ill, despite the footage clearly showing the dog was inside, nowhere near the stink zone. And then came the hammer. You are being fined $600 for violating community health and safety standards. Failure to comply may result in legal escalation. I stared at the letter, trying not to laugh. She still didn't get it. She thought the HOA was her army, that if she said it loud enough, made it formal enough, they'd march on her behalf. But she didn't realize something crucial. I had footage. I had timelines. I had neighbors. And most importantly, I had just begun. You can throw sewage. You can post videos. But the most powerful weapon in a war with a Karen? The truth, printed in bold, stapled at the corners, and delivered the right inboxes. And when one man arms a whole neighborhood with it, there's no stopping what comes next. The $600 fine from the HOA hit my mailbox like a slap wrapped in bureaucracy. Intentional creation of a hazardous environment, it read. A line so vague and dramatic. I had to double-check. I wasn't reading a villain's origin story. But here's the thing about me. I don't panic. I plan. I poured a fresh cup of coffee, pulled out a manila folder, and began building my defense. Not just to clear my name, but to make sure the HOA board felt the weight of how far Karen had pushed everyone. Evidence file included time-stamped footage of Karen entering my property across 4 separate dates, close-ups of her dragging my hose without permission, still frames of the bolt-cut hose lock with metadata proving its destruction, copies of my water bills highlighting the usage spikes, screenshots of her using the hose for her car, pool, plants, and porch, HOA bylaws, specifically Section 4.2b. Trespassing on another resident's property for the use of private utilities without consent is subject to immediate investigation and potential suspension of HOA privileges. I organized every piece of evidence by date, labeled it clearly, and included a cover letter that read like the opening argument of a courtroom drama. By the end of the day, I had a 32-page dossier ready to go. 1 copy went to the HOA. 3 more went into the mailboxes of board members I knew were on the fence. And that one stayed in a folder on my kitchen counter labeled, just in case Karen escalates. Spoiler alert, she would. When you live in suburbia long enough, you learn something strange. People suffer quietly. They complain in whispers. They mutter in driveways. But few ever speak up, until someone shows them they're not alone. I didn't just send that evidence to the HOA. I walked down to Glenn's house, 2 doors down, and handed him a copy. He blinked at the paperwork, flipped through the photos, and then looked at me like I had just handed him a copy of the Declaration of Independence. This is everything, he whispered. Glenn had his own Karen history. She'd once filed a formal complaint against his backyard hammock for being too tropical in tone. Another time, she called the HOA on him because his tomato plants were excessively large and publicly visible. Within 48 hours, word had spread. Neighbors who'd never spoken to me before knocked on my door. A young couple from 3 houses down shared that Karen had yelled at their toddler for running too loudly on the sidewalk. Another woman, Emma, admitted Karen had tried to report her for having curtains that clashed with the neighborhood aesthetic. I hadn't created a rebellion. I just lit the fuse. And the street was ready to explode. The dominoes fell faster than I expected. First came the whispers. HOA board members were overheard in the cul-de-sac, arguing over whether Karen had gone too far. A few residents copied my evidence packet and added their own complaints, mailing them directly to the HOA. Then came the leak. Someone, still unknown to this day, recorded a private HOA board meeting where Karen tried to dominate the conversation. She claimed she was the target of a smear campaign, that she was upholding the community's values and being punished for caring too much. At one point, she even shouted, "You think I'm the villain? I am the reason this neighborhood looks good." The audio was posted anonymously to the same neighborhood forum where my video first went viral. It spread like wildfire, and the HOA, suddenly, they weren't defending her anymore. They weren't speaking at all. Then, the icing on the cake. A public HOA announcement was pinned to our local forum. We are currently reviewing all formal complaints submitted by residents. Action will be taken where bylaws have been clearly violated. No names, no accusations, but everyone knew who it was about. And Karen? Her sun hat didn't come outside for 3 days straight, before the sewage incident. Karen walked the neighborhood like it was a royal court. After the audio leak, she became a ghost with a clipboard. The once daily patrol stopped. The dramatic pointing at flower beds vanished. Her porch stayed unwashed. Her car sat dusty. Her dog walked quietly, no longer tugging on a leash like it was leading a parade. Neighbors who once waved at her now closed garage doors a little faster when she passed. Lawn chairs faced the other direction. Conversation stopped when she approached. But what really sealed her fate was the mailbox incident. One morning, Karen placed flyers in a few mailboxes titled "The Truth Behind the Lies." She tried to tell her side of the story about how the neighborhood was full of ungrateful residents and underminers. She even included grainy screenshots claiming I'd doctored the hose footage, only she printed the flyers on her own home printer. Half of them were crooked. One of them was missing the last page entirely. And her argument? Weak, petty, delusional. The only thing she succeeded in doing was reinforcing what we already knew. Karen was unraveling. Desperate people do desperate things. And Karen? She wasn't just desperate. She was cornered. The final move came in the form of a city inspector. A white city-issued pickup parked in front of my house one sunny Thursday morning. The inspector introduced himself politely and said there had been an anonymous complaint filed about a suspected illegal sewage connection. I couldn't even be mad. I just grinned and invited him around back. He inspected everything. The valve, the hose, the temporary underground line I'd already removed days earlier, and even a garden where Karen claimed toxic sludge had ruined community soil. After 10 minutes of walking and sniffing and checking diagrams, he looked at me and laughed. "This is the most creative setup I've ever seen," he said. "You're in the clear. There's nothing illegal about any of this. It's not permanent. You're good." Then he added off the record, "If more people handled HOA tyrants like this, I'd have a lot fewer calls." I offered him a bottle of water. He smirked. "Only if it's not from that hose. Some battles are fought with fists, others with laws. But the greatest suburban wars? They end when silence falls on a house that once roared the loudest." And in the wake of the stink came peace, pies, and petty legacy. The day Karen vanished, there were no fireworks, no grand farewell, just silence. It started with a moving truck, unmarked, efficient, and early. I opened my blinds that morning expecting another scowl, another sidewalk confrontation, maybe even another HOA letter laced in bile. Instead, I saw two men carefully carrying wicker furniture, still stained, out to the truck bed. Karen didn't come out to direct them. No clipboard, no finger pointing, just drawn curtains and a garage door that hadn't opened in over a week. Her pink lawn flamingo, once a beacon of her reign, lay quietly beside a stack of boxes. No note, no flyers, no final insult slipped under my door. By sunset, she was gone. Just like that. The hose lay coiled in my yard, gleaming in the last light like a retired sword. That night, the neighborhood felt different. The kind of different you don't notice until it settles in your bones. No barking from her dog. No slamming doors. No distant voice complaining about someone's lawn height. Just peace. 3 days later, a silver sedan pulled into the now empty driveway. A couple stepped out, early 30s, holding a toddler who immediately dropped a stuffed dinosaur and sprinted toward the sidewalk like it was a racetrack. They waved, not scowled, not stared, waved, introduced themselves with warm smiles and a tin of fresh cookies that didn't come with passive-aggressive notes stapled underneath, asked me if I had a recommendation for a local plumber, and then came the moment that almost made me cry from the normalcy. Would it be okay if we used our own hose hookup? We saw one along the side, but wanted to make sure we're not interfering with anything. I blinked. They were asking. After weeks of war, this small moment of respect felt like a symphony. I told them they could use whatever they needed, and if they ever had hose troubles, I was more than happy to help. Later that week, I watched their kid run barefoot to their own sprinkler, water gurgling, sun blazing, laughter echoing down the street. And that was the real victory, not the viral videos, not the HOA reversal. This return to joy. The quiet lasted for a while. Then, one Thursday morning, I got an email. Subject, she's back. It was from a man named Devin, apparently living in a different HOA across town. He'd found me through the now infamous video of Karen's sewage sprinkler incident, which had been reshared by a popular TikTok account with over 4 million views. He wasn't writing to compliment me. He was sending a distress call. Turns out, Karen had resurfaced, and she was already at it again. Her first week in Devin's neighborhood, she filed 3 complaints. One about someone's wind chimes being emotionally disruptive. One about a stray cat walking across her porch, and one about a neighbor's welcome mat being too sarcastic. But the best part? She was caught dragging another neighbor's hose across her lawn, again, to wash her SUV. She hadn't learned. She hadn't grown. She had relocated her reign of terror. Devin asked if I had any tactical advice. I smiled and sent him everything. The valve design diagram, camera placement tips, a PDF titled Karen Defense Protocol. He replied, 3 words. This means war. 2 weeks passed. I didn't hear back. Then the footage hit the internet. Grainy, slightly shaky, but undeniably glorious. Devin had taken my setup, put his own spin on it, and baited her perfectly. But instead of sewage, he'd use a foul-smelling compost tea mixed with expired fertilizer, completely organic, but no less revolting. Karen strutted into frame, hose in hand, smug as ever. She hooked it up, turned the spigot, and was immediately greeted by a stream of thick brown sludge that sprayed across her walkway, into her flower pots, and chef's kiss, all over her new garden gnome collection. She screamed, slipped, fell straight into a bush. Children on scooters nearby witnessed the event in full, and could be heard laughing hysterically in the background. The video was titled, Karen's Revenge, Chapter 2, The Brown Awakens. Reddit loved it. TikTok loved it. A few accounts even linked it to my original, now calling the whole saga, the HOA Hose Wars. Karen had become a running meme, a symbol of entitled tyranny. And we were the resistance. I never set out to be a folk hero. I just wanted my water bill to make sense. But after all, Karen's reign, the videos, the uprisings, I decided to do something more with the chaos. I started a blog, Hose and Order. It began as a place to tell my story. Then people started sending theirs. Stories of vindictive HOA presidents, nosy neighbors, and creative retaliations. Everything from paintballing speeders to someone releasing geese on a property line dispute. I turned my own videos into a short miniseries. Added dramatic music, narration, even some reenactments with miniature figurines for laughs. The blog took off. People began sending merch ideas. One guy mailed me a prototype t-shirt with the phrase, Hose before brothers. Another offered to help me publish a book. A woman from Ohio sent me a pie with a note. Thank you for proving that not all heroes wear capes. Some whole garden hoses. But my favorite moment, the one that really sealed it, it was a quiet evening. I was trimming hedges in the backyard. The sun was setting, and I heard it. Laughter. Real, unfiltered laughter. The new family, the couple and their toddler, were dancing to a sprinkler in their front yard. No yelling, no spying, no stolen hoses, just peace. And as I coiled up my own hose one last time, I realized something absurdly poetic. That simple plastic tube, the one that sparked a neighborhood war, had somehow united strangers, humbled a tyrant, and brought a little bit of joy back to the world. Not bad for a garden tool.